G'day and welcome back to the garage. It's been a while now since the RM250 build was completed, and in that time I've received a bunch of questions that I'm going to attempt to answer in this video. And while I'm answering questions, in the background you'll see some video of the preparation of a few bikes for the recent retro dirt bike show, where the RM was on display for the first time. Let's get started. The first question is by far and away the most common. How much did it cost? And to be honest, I don't really know what it cost, but I'll add up some of the big ticket items. And this is all in Australian dollars, so you'll need to convert it to your own currency. The original bike, that cost $1,500. That exhaust, that cost $648. Both radiators, $816. The new old stock seat, that cost $362. That new cylinder, $593. The front and rear rims, they were $463. And then there's all the miscellaneous new old stock parts. They came to $4,248. And on top of that, a bunch of other stuff cost about $2,000. Add to that a hefty shipping bill, and the total cost was about, and I don't even want to say it, $11,380. Then there's my time on top of that, of which there'd have to be at least 1,000 hours. So it's not a cheap project by any means. With the hardest question out of the way, we can get on to the next one, and that's where did I buy the parts? And well, they came from a few places, but the main ones were Partzilla from the USA, CMS NL from the Netherlands, eBay from all over the world, and then a local supply to me, Mick Hone Motorcycles. Then there's Facebook pages, forums and other places all over the internet, but 99% of the parts came from those places mentioned before. So will we see it running? Well, the short answer is, well, maybe. Right now I just don't know. At the moment there's no fluids in it, other than in the forks and in the rear shock. It's just like a brand new bike. And then some days I feel like throwing fuel, oil and coolant in it and taking it for a ride. Then on others, I just enjoy looking at it as it is. But what I do know is that if it does get started, I'll definitely make a video of that process. But for now, I'm just going to enjoy owning a close to brand new 1992 RM250. So why did I choose to paint the frame instead of powder coat? Well, that's an easy one. It's how it would have been done in the factory. The original frame would have been painted in acrylic paint, so that's how I've done it too. I actually don't like powder coat very much. It's hard to match colours and I can't do it myself at home, and it's really thick and hard to work with. Also, you can't really patch it up, so if something goes wrong, like it did for me when the bike fell off the stand, if that was powder coated, it would have had to been stripped down and redone. So what was the best and worst bits of the build? Well, that's a good question. best part of the build was the encouragement and engagement of you guys, the viewers. Hearing of people being inspired to restore a bike or even work on their bike because of these videos is the best. And the worst part? Oh, well, maybe when it fell off that stand. That moment when I heard the crash and looked around and saw the bike on the ground, my heart sank. I thought for sure a radiator would have been damaged, but luckily it was just some paint damage that could be repaired. Oh, and fitting the tyres. I really hate fitting tyres. Did I find the exact new old stock tyres and tubes that were on the bike? Well, no I didn't. I did use the modern equivalents of the original Dunlops though. Finding 25-year-old new tyres is really difficult. I've been there on a previous build and I don't think it's worth holding the project up for. So why did I choose a braided front brake line instead of restoring it like the rear brake line? Well, the fittings on the original brake line were heavily corroded, so I didn't use it. The braided line on the bike came with a bunch of parts that I purchased from another guy's project that didn't go ahead. And I actually used a similar technique to the rear hose by covering it with black heat shrink to make it look closer to OEM. I will keep an eye out for a new old stock item though, as it's one part on the bike that doesn't look as original as I'd like. What was the most difficult part to find? Well, there's a few parts on the bike that aren't easy to get, and the seat is probably the hardest, although they do come up from time to time. The pipe is another hard to get part, and the radiators are reasonably rare too. Having said all of that, the availability of parts on this bike was really good, especially in comparison to the equivalent Japanese motocrossers of the same age. So what was the single most difficult part of the restoration? Well, actually none of it was overly difficult, but some of it took some time and some of it was frustrating. And I was really worried about the damage to the rear part of the frame and how that would come up. Luckily though, it turned out okay and everything looks straight. But there is some small annoying jobs that I hate, and that includes fitting the tyres and those plastic radiator guards. But honestly, as long as you follow the manual, none of it is overly hard to do. So some more info about the plating process. Well, the zinc plating kit that I use comes from an Australian company called Jane Kits. You can Google them and buy all sorts of plating kits from their online store. I use a zinc plating kit because it's easy to do at home and it replicates a factory style finish. Did I have to polish the parts after plating, or are they ready to install when they come out of the tank? Well, most of the time they are ready to go straight out of the tank. As long as the preparation is done properly before the plating process, the parts usually come out really good. Sometimes though, they do come out a bit dull, and a quick polish helps bring them up to a nice shine. So why did I choose a hydroblast mob in Queensland instead of Victoria? Well, I chose Pioneer Finishes in Queensland because Mark does great work. He knows these bikes and he restores his own. He also knows how to create the correct factory-like finish. And for me, I'd have to send the parts away anyway, so sending them to the other side of the country isn't that big of a deal. When I did the brakes, did it take long for the rears to firm up? And the short answer is yes, they did. And I ended up using a vacuum bleeder to get the air out. You can buy a basic vacuum bleeder from eBay quite cheaply, and when you do, you'll wonder what you ever did without it. So what do I do for a job, and what's my professional background? Well, I was nearly going to leave this out, but it does get asked quite a lot. And the answer is that I'm a mechanical engineer. But that doesn't really help a great deal with restoring or working on bikes. You learn by getting your hands dirty and having a go. You learn by making mistakes, and you learn by fixing mistakes. And at the end of the day, as long as you're having fun, it doesn't matter if you're changing a spark plug or you're completing a full restoration. And so for now, that's about it. If you have any other questions, ask them in the comments below and I'll try my best to answer them. But now, it's time to move on to the next project, or two.